This video was sponsored by Ubisoft. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is out now for the Nintendo Switch, and you can learn more at the link in the description. In my last guide, we went over the characters that you can play in Mario plus Rabbids, sharing good ways to use each one in an effective strategy. Today we'll be taking that knowledge one step further, giving you guys some tips on how to deal with each of the game's regular boss battles. These kingdom battles are brutal, and finishing each boss under the turn time limit with 0 fallen allies in order to get a gold trophy? Even more brutal. Fair warning, although I'm sure you're already expecting this video contains some pretty big spoilers. Watch out if you want to be surprised by these bosses, but don't mind coming back to check out the tips if you end up getting stuck at some point. Also, some boss battles might look like I have a lot more HP than you might at your stage in the game. This game allows you to replay chapters using the washing machine, but you keep all of your HP bonuses that you've collected throughout the game when you go back to play old levels. Regardless, when refighting any bosses to get footage, I tried my best to make sure that my characters had the same weapons and skills that you would own at that part in the regular story. Let's kick things off with the World 1 mini-boss, Pirabbid Plant. This boss is the first major difficulty spike in the game, and it's a good starting point for realizing everything that boss battles can throw at you. I always recommend starting any new boss fight by pressing X to look at that tactic cam and learn everything that you can about your enemy movement, damage, and abilities. Pirabbid Plant has absurd movement, almost to the point where you're almost never safe from an attack. The rocket destroys cover, hits an area of effect, and often inflicts burn for extra damage and random panic movement that can put you into more harm's way. Because you won't have regular healing at this stage of the game, I recommend taking out all other enemies that you can in order to minimize the damage that you could take. Also, because of that area of effect attack, it's in your best interest to split up the party across the map, using team jumps and warp pipes to get some distance. Right from the start, I recommend combining the warp pipe with a dash to take a shot at each of those two enemies above you with Rabbid Peach and Rabbid Luigi. The map before this one teaches you that you deal extra damage when firing from high ground, and that's exactly what I recommend here, dealing that extra damage to clear out ground troops while pitching in to take out the big plant itself. Also, even though Pirabbid Plant is a big enemy, it can still be dashed into like a regular one. If you're having trouble approaching, try keeping Mario and Rabbid Luigi back while Rabbid Peach runs forward for a dash. She can take more of a hit with her shield than the other characters. Even though it's almost impossible to take on the plant without getting hit, if you clear the Ziggies and keep your distance, you should be able to easily clear this map for gold in the generous 8 turns that the game gives you. You'll also unlock Luigi, which as I mentioned in my character guide was my favorite character in the game, and one you'll see me using for most of the rest of the bosses. Moving on to the first major boss of the game is Rabbid Kong, with one of my favorite songs in the game, an amazing remix to the Donkey Kong 64 Jungle Japes theme. His main attack is a giant shockwave that forces everyone hit by it to be bounced backwards. It only deals weak damage, but that bounce can make approaching him really tough. You can avoid the attack completely if you stand behind one of the large black boxes of cover, but partial cover won't cut it. You'll still get blasted. At first, the fight seems impossible. You hit the Kong, he eats a banana, and heals completely. What gives? It turns out that in order to cut out the Kong's supply, someone has to stomp on that green banana box to make them drop. The downside to this is that you're in harm's way for Kong's much stronger 50 damage melee attack if you're standing here. Once you've completed the first cycle, Kong will jump to the platform on the left and reset with a brand new Shockwave Slam. This will easily catch you off guard if you didn't know better, but with careful planning you can make sure that you're behind cover from the direction that the next slam is coming before you get sent flying. In his final cycle, he'll jump across the map to the final platform on the right for a third phase, so keep an eye out for that too. My biggest secret to this fight is the sentry. Either using Luigi or Rabbid Peach, send a sentry Rabbid Kong's way. Once the sentry reaches the banana platform, it will count as a player standing on it to drop his healing supply, all without having to risk someone's life. Using sentries, movement options like Team Jump, and your newfound healing abilities on Rabbid Peach or Rabbid Luigi, you should be able to outstrong the Kong. You get 12 turns to collect a gold on this one, so your biggest obstacle will just be playing it safe to stay alive. Starting in the middle of World 2 is our first double boss, Blizzy and Sandy, a sort of Twin Rova-esque experience. Both have 9 movement and a 65 damage attack, either in the form of a freezing snipe or a burning grenade. Blizzy has the equivalent of Hero Sight that can hit you while you move on your own turn, and Sandy has a shield that protects it from one attack of any amount of damage. One big thing that separates these two though is HP. Blizzy has half the HP of Sandy at 210. Because of this, I think taking out Blizzy on turn 1 should be your #1 priority. Use big hitters like sentries, M-Power, whatever you got to strike at a distance, spread out, and stay relatively safe for the next turn. Once you've done that, you can truly specialize your team's roles for taking Sandy down. As usual with area of effect bosses, you want to spread out so that only one character gets hit at a time. I liked using Luigi and his steely stare to take high damaging shots from the raised area on the left, Mario for huge damage with his hammer, and Rabbid Luigi to dash the shield and break it, providing a healing solution for the rest of the team with Vamp. Like all the bosses, you can clear this map as long as you KO just the bosses. It doesn't matter if the minions are still alive. However, one big thing to look out for with the minions is that they have villain sight abilities as well. When moving, make sure you move a character so that they can take a hit instead of forcing your lowest HP character to get blasted on your own turn. I had to reset this one a couple times because of stupid mistakes, but when I finally got my combo established, I was able to take this one down in 3 turns. The game gives you a generous 7 for a gold trophy, so it shouldn't be too much of a challenge to claim your prize there. The biggest prize here though is your new character, Rabbid Mario, awarded for your win. Speaking of new characters, the second major boss, Icicle Golem, comes with a nice twist. You'll unlock Peach right before the fight. You're actually forced into a team with Peach and Rabbid Peach for this one, so you won't have to sweat the details of picking a team. The Golem begins with a massive version of the Shielder, holding a door of the fridge in its way to block all normal damage from the front. However, thanks to your team of Peach and Rabbid Peach, you'll have 2 ways right off the bat to hit this thing. Peach's Grenade Duck and Rabbid Peach's Sentry deal area of effect blasts that go straight through shields, so start with that. Also, the Golem is exposed for Hero Sight type abilities when it moves, so use that to your advantage to quickly fight through Phase 1. In Phase 2, the Golem will lose its shield, but gain some smashers, along with the ability to activate Villain Sight. I would try to stick to one side, dealing with one smasher immediately, but then working on the Golem while the other one slowly makes its way to you. You have some of the best tanking and healing in the game on the same team, so you won't often hit low HP in this round. If you beat Phase 2, Phase 3 will immediately get a free attack and a free Villain Sight off. On top of this, support enemies that can heal the Golem will spawn as well. Unlike the Smasher, these need to be dealt with immediately unless you have the firepower to take the Golem out in a single turn, because their heal is very significant. Once the third phase is over, you just have to have one character dash into the remains for a victory. Because of all the healing and the Golem's relatively low damage output, I found this to be one of the easiest fights in terms of keeping all 3 members of the party alive. However, I did end up using all 10 of my 10-turn limit for this gold trophy, so time may be your bigger villain in this one than the other bosses. Once you've gotten a decent distance into World 3, you'll meet Calavera, the delightfully spooky mid-boss holding Rabbid Yoshi hostage. Like the Golem before it, Calavera holds a shield in front of it for defense, blocking any normal attack from the direction it faces. It hits pretty hard, using Rabbid Luigi's grenades against you for 100 damage and the chance of being pushed. Combined with the Scaredy Rabbid ability, there's a constant theme of pushing you back, making it harder and harder for you to get forward and flank it. I think dealing with as many of the 3 enemies in front of you is a good idea, especially since getting behind Calavera is going to take some time anyways. Like the other shielded enemies, this boss will expose itself to fire when it moves, making Hero Sight abilities amazing for racking up damage even when it's facing its front. I decided to go with Luigi and Rabbid Peach for this one for that double sentry action. Not only does this make piling on damage a little easier, but I found that the sentry seems to be a favorite target for distracting the teleporting peekaboo enemies. This is the first boss fight where I feel like staying alive is pretty challenging. I didn't use her in my playthrough, but I think that normal Peach could probably help this problem with their tanking abilities. However, you have just 5 turns to grab the gold, so you want to make sure that you can seal the deal in time as well. Just make sure that when you're trying to close things out with Mario's hammer that you aren't a dummy like me and try and hit it from the front. Just because the hammer can hit an enemy that's one space away from you, doesn't mean that it can hit through that shield. Return Calavera to the coffin, and Rabbid Yoshi is yours. At the end of the third world, you'll meet by far the most colorful boss in the game, the Singing Phantom. He has more than a few bad words to say to you, all in the form of song. More like the great mighty boo, am I right? Does that reference still work? Am I getting old? Do kids still know what a conquer is? The Phantom, as he will constantly remind you mid-battle with song, can only be damaged when you've broken all of his spotlights. The first phase is pretty easy because you only have to hit 1 in the middle. In the second phase, you'll have to bust 2 in the top right, and then finally you'll have to break the 3 in the top left. The Phantom's damage output is actually pretty low considering how late in the game he is. He can push you out of bounds for extra damage, but he isn't a huge threat on his own. It didn't come up in my footage, but he can also create a ring around himself to turn you into stone for a turn, so keeping your distance is a good idea. At the start, I found getting rid of those Valkyries a top priority to stop him from being defended. Blasting away to the second phase should be pretty easy after that. You can play high risk, high reward by firing from above for extra damage with someone like Luigi. I love Luigi and couldn't help myself here, but you do open yourself up to an almost automatic push out of bounds, so keep that in mind. In the second phase, 3 shielder enemies will begin to spawn. I found that breaking the 2 spotlights and firing on the Phantom while immediately heading to the left is the play. The shielders will often try and get the high ground on you on the right, but then they'll be so far away by the time you've escaped to the left that usually 2 of the 3 won't even be able to chase you for the rest of the battle. Also, just like Rabbid Kong, if you know where to be in advance, you can easily get characters in good spots to dash out the lights in future phases right as they occur. Peekaboos do spawn in Wave 3, but I was able to take out the Phantom's somewhat lower 500 hit points before I even had to bother with them. I can't say it was fancy, but my bread and butter squad of Rabbid, Peach, and Luigi was able to handle the Phantom pretty well, getting the job done in 5 turns by abusing Rabbid Peach's shield and high ground shots from the Mario Brothers. You get a pretty reasonable 9 turns to reach a gold trophy here, giving you plenty of time to bring the curtain down on this Phantom's opera. Moving to the final world is by far the boss I had the most trouble with, Mecha JR. This boss is obnoxious because he is strapped to another level that you have to beat first. Thankfully, I've done this first part so many times that I can show you exactly what I did to constantly clear it in 2 turns. Use M-Power and double sentries with Luigi and Rabbid Peach. Activate Luigi's Steely Stare. Shield up with Peach. Easily clean up by healing and hammer time on turn 2 for the win. It isn't hard, but it's exhausting that you have to do this every time if you want to challenge Junior, so you might as well get used to it. Thankfully, you can change up your team when you fight Junior if you want to, and I actually did in the end. Bowser Jr. is like a giant smasher. Anytime you hit him, he will take a chase movement action of 6 spaces. If you're within his 2-space melee range at the end of that movement, he gets a free attack too. Unlike Smashers, he has a giant melee damage and a sentry that he can deploy if you're too far away. And on top of that, he can pull you in with Magnet Dance and get you into his range if you aren't that far away from him. He has a massive 2000 HP, and if you want a gold trophy, you have to beat him in 3 turns. What? That seems impossible! I put my blood, sweat, and tears into finally beating him for the first time, and that took me 5 turns. It just wasn't enough. But I didn't want a washing machine to beat him with OP weapons later. I reset until I was able to do it in 3 turns, and here's what I found works very well. Turn 1, M-Power is a must for damage. Junior shoots a sentry out at you at the start of the battle, but if you shoot Junior, he'll charge forward and step onto his own sentry for bonus damage, and he'll be just out of range to hit you. Rabbid Yoshi also seems just built for this fight. If you activate Outer Shell, you can afford to hit him with an attack and get almost no punishment in return, drawing Junior into a corner at the start of the first turn, and giving the rest of your squad the space they need to run away everyone out of range. When Junior isn't in range to smash you or Magnet Dance, he'll always deploy a sentry. You can use the same technique you did in the first turn. Hit him so that he charges forward into his own sentry. Finally, with the Mario Brothers on opposite ends of the stage and fully upgraded Hero Sight and Steely Stare, I activated both and hit Junior once and proceeded to watch the most entertaining game of ping pong ever. He'll keep trying to rush down the person that just shot him, but then it just activates the other brother's shot. You could probably deal up to 1000 damage with this alone if all 5 shots hit. After hours of trial and error, I was pretty satisfied turning an impossible 3-turn fight into one that took just 2 turns. Hopefully this helps you out, and at the very least I think that using Rabbid Yoshi instead of a healer on this stage is worth it for that shell alone. For this well-earned win, you'll get the OG Yoshi as your final team partner. Shortly after this fight, you'll encounter a battle with some familiar faces. Wario and Waluigi. Words cannot describe how happy I was to see anyone acknowledge that Waluigi still exists out there in the Mario universe. These guys show up a couple times in the end stages, along with an additional enemy called Lava Queen, but they're pretty straightforward, slightly larger versions of existing enemy archetypes with an ability attached. I was on the fence whether or not to give them a detailed guide or not, but I've decided to leave this challenge up to you guys to tackle since there are no real big surprises here. I was a fan of Rabbid Yoshi here as well though, because he can take a big smasher Waluigi hit for basically 0 damage with his shell. But now it's time for the grand finale, and what Mario game would this be if it didn't end in a showdown with Bowser? MechaDragonBowser is intense, with by far the most total HP over his 3 stages. You have 7 turns to go for the gold in this ultimate battle, and it'll definitely test your knowledge of the game's mechanics, along with throwing a few surprises your way. In stage 1, you'll get a feel for his main mode. He has a massive range and can basically hit anyone on your team for 100 damage and burn at will, and he has a villain sight ability, and he's connected to 4 Valkyries. My favorite turn 1 move, unsurprisingly, is a sentry after an M-Power right down the middle that hits 2 Valkyries and Bowser right from the start. You can use your other 2 characters to spread out, using dashes to clear those middle Valkyries, taking out 1 other Valkyrie, and dealing enough damage to hopefully have Form 1 done by turn 2. Bowser's second form has another 1600 HP and immediately makes it rain fire from the sky. On the bright side, this form seems to not really attack you outside of the fire. He just makes it rain and then circles to the next part of the stage clockwise, sometimes activating a guard ability for minions that are still alive. You can look at the scorch marks on the ground to try and get out of the fire's range, but I found that this can be really difficult to perfectly position and just to see, and in the first turn or two you can usually afford to take a small hit. Eventually he will spawn 4 shielders. Here's where I found Rabbid Luigi to truly shine. His weaken ability can make the shielders feel like almost no threat at all if you can hit more than one in a single debuff, and they make perfect targets for dashes into Vamp, allowing your teammates to hit them for healing if you need it at this stage of the fight. If possible, you want to do everything you can to enter stage 3 of the fight with all 3 of your characters hiding behind one of those black blocks of cover, with your character on the side of the cover facing the outer edge of the stage. Standing by this cover is crucial for making quick work of an otherwise frustrating final phase. In Phase 3, Bowser will land again in the center of the stage, this time completely invincible to all damage on your turn. On his turn, Bowser will slide to the nearest character in a spinning flaming shell. If he hits one of the black boxes of cover first, though, his shield will be broken and he will be vulnerable for a turn. With Mario's M power, or Yoshi's Super Chance, you can pile on the damage in this turn, and maybe even take out Bowser's final form in a single go. If not, keep in mind that 4 Smashers spawn on this phase, but that most of them can't reach you if you're smart about where you position your characters. Whatever you do, if you cannot beat Bowser on this turn, make sure that everyone finds a place behind a cover box for the next shell attack. It isn't easy, and you might be best off trying to make that 7-turn limit after getting some upgraded weapons after you beat the game, but with a plan in place, even a Flying Dragon Bowser can be stopped by your unlikely heroes in 7 turns. That's all for each of these games' main bosses, but even these and the gold trophies aren't the only challenges for you throughout Mario plus Rabbids. Between all the game's challenge courses, and word that a new DLC story content is coming next year, there's a good chance that this isn't the last Rabbid guide that I make. If not, I'll definitely catch you guys with this game on my next Twitch stream, because I am addicted. As always, thank you so much for watching, thanks to Ubisoft for supporting this channel, and I'll see you guys next time with more Nintendo content.